Hello and welcome to DDOCast, episode 347, recorded live on Sunday, August 17th. I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have from DDO Gamer, Geoff Hanna, who's playing with some camera stuff.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
That's a little creepy. We also have from Galanda, Lich returning with us.
Howdy do. I don't have camera stuff yet at all.
That's okay. We'll hopefully get that back later. This week's screenshot, Urlock celebrates in Halfling Paradise in the 184th screenshot of the week. I think that is going to be a very rich halfling there. Kind of begs the question, when you think about how much plat we have, where do we keep it all? 4 million plat is the plat cap on a character. Where do they stick it?
Well, think about how much 4 million plat would weigh, right? I mean, how big is a piece of platinum?
About as same size as a gold coin, right?
Well, I don't know. A gold coin weighs like an ounce, right? That's a very small gold coin.
I mean, technically we have bags of holding, so that would kind of fix that problem.
Yeah, apparently so.
In any case, we like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Google Plus Hangouts, YouTube, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will probably be sometime next week, late weekend. I haven't really nailed it down yet. I'm hoping to get Samus on the show, and we'll talk a little bit about Gen Con. You can stay updated by following us on social media pages or our website calendar, DDOcast.com. There's a nice fancy calendar there. On the podcast this week, we're going to talk about changes coming to the Defender enhancement lines, and we're also going to talk about healing. Get some tips on healing, how to be a more effective healer, and fun stuff like that. So, for the game news, there's a few updates that came through. So this is all this stuff is related to the Armor Up updates that were the Armor Up threads that were posted 2-3 weeks ago. Armor will give a specific amount of MMR as listed in the dev diary. For itemization, any sheltering items will give MMR in equal amounts to PRR. They are changing the Defender trees to include MMR as well. Beyond that, they are not adding MMR universally. As time goes on and they rebalance trees, they might find specific trees that need more MMR, but it will not necessarily be added as part of the upcoming patch, which is a little bit different because they previously had said, perhaps a little unclearly, that there's basically a misunderstanding here. Based on what they had said, everyone kind of thought that, so PRR is going to equal MMR. And it's going to be pretty much a 1-for-1 ratio. That's not going to be the case. And in fact, he went on to clarify that the bonus to PRR has two parts. We're talking about armor here. The static value that they're adding includes MMR. However, the current amount of PRR on live based on base attack bonus, which is sticking around, will not include magical resistance. So there's not going to be as big of an MMR boost as we previously thought might be coming. But that's what it's going to be. And then, do you guys have any comments on that portion?
I still need to see it on Lamania just to make sure that everything works out for me, because, I mean, it seems like it's, especially with this news, it's going to be a drop in the bucket, but we'll see. I mean, there's still that argument of, do I want to take some or none at all still, But
whatever you get will be beneficial. May not be overly beneficial, but
it'll be helpful, but it might still not sway some build choices unless it's substantial. But it'll be a reason for heavy armor. I mean, that'll be just useful to be back into heavy plate again, which is going to be handy.
It's important to note, too, that if you have a heavy shield or a tower shield, your MMR will double. The value will double, so there's some stuff going on there. Regarding shields, with the next update, the game has a reason, even if it's a niche build, for every shield type to be useful. This is kind of a response to some questions about shields. So this is kind of where the devs are looking at shield usages here. Bucklers are useful to swashbuckler bards. Small shields are useful to evasion tanks. Heavy shields are useful to tanks looking to save a feat, and tower shields are useful to heavy tanks because you need a feat to use tower shields unless you're a fighter. So heavy shields probably won't have a huge, wide usage anymore. But yeah, that's what we get. We're going to have. For the next update, they've changed all incarnations of the Shield of Mourning to small shields and boosted the stats between the other named small shields they've looked at and the changes to the Shield of Mourning. Evasion-based tanks that will want to use shields should have a named shield every few levels from 6th up to the end game. Since existing Shield of Mourning items will be changed in place, players can even go get them now to prepare for the update. They also looked at boosting the weather charge, but it isn't actually that bad, and we might not be able to squeeze that in. And they have endeavored to add good endgame small shields to the new Orchard content. So there should be some small shields available there.
And now, is that shard or tapestry turn in, or how's that going to work? Do we know?
No clue. But that would seem.
It would be pretty cool if you could get those tapestry turn-ins in a variety of sizes. That would make them pretty useful potentially.
Yeah, that would seem to stand to reason. Well, tapestries was helms. They're shield pieces that you could turn in for that, which they might even be maybe considering that to be part of what they're saying where what they're saying that they feel that there's more or less enough small shields in the game to kind of cover that. But that's kind of hard to say without actually knowing what they're looking at specifically.
Yeah, I misspoke. I meant the shield pieces. But there's like 8 named shields, right, that you can get from the shield pieces, and it would be very interesting to be able to select those attributes on differing sizes of shield, and kind of in line with what they're trying to get done in this pass. But just a thought.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say what shields we're looking at specifically, but certainly there's a wide variety of shields in just that particular shield tree, or whatever you want to call it, that crafting system. But they know that there's maybe as many shields as they want, but they are looking to add shields to the game. So it'll probably be similar to rune arms. I mean, there's not, if you think about it, there's not really a ton of rune arms in the game, particularly since you can't find a random rune arm. They're all named. You can only get them through named loot. They're not available any other way. And in most cases, you actually have to they're actually end rewards, at least for low level content. So, and I don't seem to see people having too many problems finding rune arms for their artificers. So maybe not a wide variety. And you can certainly make the argument that there's not as big of a need to have a wide variety of rune arms. But for a counterpoint, there you go.
It is only one class. Out of many.
Let's talk about, we'll move on and talk about changes coming to the Defender line. So this is, we'll start with the Paladin Sacred Defender line, and then there's also some changes coming to the Fighter Defender line, Stalwart Defender. But the changes are fairly minimal, but we'll kind of go through some of the changes. Just to kind of start with the Sacred Defender line, they did change action point costs for some existing enhancements. The Saves Boost changed to Saves Boost, Defense Boost, Reinforced Defense, and Harbored by Light all changed to 1 action point per tier. And then they did some stuff with changes with the trees themselves. And the core abilities, they basically switched the 2nd and 3rd core enhancements. So now you can get the defense stance at level 3 instead of level 6. And then the Channel Divinity, Divine Righteousness Channel Divinity, which was the one that gave you 100% Sacred bonus to threat and some temporary hit points, that is now at tier 3. And then the let's see, that would be the fourth and fifth core enhancements now give a passive bonus to 5 physical resistance and MMR, for both of those, and then the capstone will give an additional +2 Constitution as well as 10 PRR and MMR. I don't think that's enough to convince me that I want to be a pure paladin, but it's certainly better than it was. Do either of you guys play in this tree very much, or with paladins in general?
Generally not, but I will, splash like a bunch of other people, and there's some good stuff in there. But this might get me to try out a pure Blade Forged, but that's probably as far as I would go. They're getting some crazy offensive options.
Yeah, and for me, Paladin, because the Paladins don't get tower shields, it takes a feat to get tower shield. Taking 2 levels of fighter has always worked really well for my Paladin, because my Paladin is a sword and board tank. And 2 levels of fighter gets you 3 feats, the 2 fighter bonus feats and the free tower shield feat, which is a pretty good deal, I think. Let's look at the different tiers. In the second tier, the defensive boost will give an action boost not only to physical resistance rating, but also magical resistance rating. I'll hit for 20 seconds. And then they changed the greater defense trees. So if you're familiar with this tree, there's 2 lines that improve your defensive stance. The first line, it doesn't matter. There's no requirements. The second line, the greater line, requires you to use a shield. Now it will require you to either have a shield or wear medium or heavy armor. And then it still has the same 3 choices for that. Let's see. Swift defense now grants you a 10% sacred bonus to movement speed. I think they took the speed penalty away.
Yes,
so
they said they were going to.
I didn't read this part, but the movement penalty was removed. They also note that the defensive stance that's in this tree does not require a shield, which is true on live. You don't actually need a shield for it. You only needed a shield for the greater defense stuff. So let's see, that would roughly be 20% faster, which would be pretty slick. Or no, it'd only be 10% because it would take the penalty away. So now you'll be 10% faster at all levels for this. At tier 5, they are adding reprisal on attack. Your next attack gains +1 damage. This effect stacks up to 10 times on tier 3. And for Hybrid by Light, it adds magical resistance rating, and you gain uses of lay on hands, up to 3 uses of lay on hands, which it was apparently doing by mistake on live anyways, and they just kind of made it an official bonus. Either because they couldn't fix it or didn't feel like they wanted to fix it. Either way, I'm pretty happy with that. What paladin doesn't like extra lay on hands? So that's the tree. Some of the comments they made, as a side note, feedback from players wasn't that Paladin had issues surviving. They didn't boost the survival enhancements. Because of that, they concentrated on bringing the trees in line with the new armor up changes and reducing costs, since that was the biggest concern players had. And they will bring up Threat and Intimidate with the team, even if they can't get it into the update. It's something that they should be looking at. And that's the Paladin. So not a lot of changes, but a few small little things. I don't know if you guys have any comments, or if you want to just move on to Fighter.
Let's just move on, compare maybe.
All right. So Fighter, they're updating some enhancements in the Stellar Defender tree for fighters. So the following had action point changes or cost changes. The Stalwart Defensive Mastery, the Stalwart Shield Mastery, and the Reinforced Defense now cost 1 action point per tree. The changes, again, they moved the defensive stance to the second core ability, and moved the second core ability overbalanced to the third core ability, and removed the movement penalty to the stance, and added 10 magical resistance to that stance. I think they added that to the Paladins one, and I didn't mention that. Yeah, they did, and I didn't highlight it in red because they didn't highlight it in red for me. Let's see.
I don't
Yes,
know. I kind of liked having the tier 2 where it was. I mean, that made it easier to splash these classes because I'm not into the stance. I'm look. Well, I guess it depends on the character you're trying to build, but it was that it means if you're going to splash either of these two classes, you're probably going to splash it more deeply than you would have otherwise.
well,
What do you think?
before, usually if you were going to go into these trees, you'd want the stance. I mean, the stance is kind of the core thing about the trees, which you had to get 6 levels just to get to that. So they made that easier to get to, and then in exchange, the overbalance from the fighter line, which on Vorpal, your shields get a knock your opponent to the ground thing, which I don't think anyone's going to be too bummed about losing that. I don't think anyone would take only 3 fighter levels to get that. That seems a little strange. Um, the Paladin one, I could see people being a little more bummed about since it's 100% sacred bonus to threat, but I don't think it's something that's going to be. I think people are more likely going into that tree for the stance. And removing and making it so you only have to get 3 levels to get the defensive stance will probably increase the likelihood that people will multi-class for these trees, which I think is a good thing.
I've got a 6 fighter splash right now just for that stance. The benefits that you get out of Defender are pretty good, and this will just make it easier to splash that and maybe take a little bit more of the primary class that whatever you're going for.
Yeah, that's right. And it'll save my fighter, because my fighter's not a sword and board guy. He doesn't really use shields, but he splashes into this tree to get the stance just to get some extra boosts and stuff. And probably because he has some max points to spend that he can get that. But he doesn't use a shield, so the overbalance thing isn't really that impressive. So won't have to spend as many action points to get the stance that he wants, and as opposed to taking this ability that he doesn't. In any case, let's see, stand fast and defensive sweep, as well as the capstone, which this is basically the last 3 parts of the core abilities. They all used to require a shield. They will no longer do that. And the action boost that gives plus 50 to magical resistance rating will also give 50 to magical resistance rating now. That's in the capstone. Let's see. The improved Stalwart Defense, the multi-selector will add to MMR, as well as the defensive boost. And I think I again missed that in the Paladin tree, that the improved defense selector enhancement will give you magical resistance rating as well. They took out shield striking from the tier 2, and they fixed the fact that armor expertise required you to be level 12. Oops. Tier 2 ability requires you to be level 12. That's not right. Shield expertise will now give a plus competence bonus to weapons and shields. It previously was just shields. And then swift defense, as in the Paladin line, will get a 10% bonus to movement, since it's no longer taking away the penalty, which no longer exists. And then reprisal and block and cut from the top tier no longer require shields. And then some of the comments. Defensive stance does not require heavy or medium armor, nor does it require a shield. So there's kind of a distinction that some people weren't catching that applies to both trees. The defensive stance does not require you have a shield, which is true on live currently. That's how it works. You only need a shield or the heavier armor for the greater improvements to the defensive stance, which would be the bonuses to strength, constitution, and the percent bonus to hit points.
Also, very good synergy with swashbucklers.
Yes, very. Single weapon fighting.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun things you can do there. Well, the single weapon fighting doesn't work if you have a shield unless you're using a buckler and a swashbuckler.
Right.
But in any case, let's see. Removing the shield striking it's being rolled into the Vanguard tree. They didn't want Vanguard bells to be forced to dip into this tree for that 50% chance of a secondary shield bash, which makes a lot of sense. Which I think hopefully means that we'll see the Vanguard tree shortly, and at least it will be in this update, which sounds like a good plan since we're going to be going in that direction. And then there were some things that several posted to try and give insight into why the changes to this tree are minimal. They had 3 goals in mind. Bring the tree in line with armor up changes, make it less dependent on shield, and reduce some cost. If it didn't fall in line with one of those goals, they didn't make changes to the tree. That's why a lot of existing enhancements were not changed. A full redesign would have pushed the next update out too far, which is probably fair. So those are the defensive line changes. Anything you guys want to add into any of this stuff?
I'm just going to have to see him in action. I have a fighter, but the shield regularly. Other than, I've got a 5th level character that I keep at 5th level to play with brand new players, or 4th level. So I'm probably not a great guy to comment on some of these shield-based bonuses to begin with, because I just simply don't use them. It seems like kind of a waste of a magic item slot. Frankly, I'd rather have another weapon there, or a 2-handed weapon in the first place. So I'm just going to have to see how these play out.
Well, you, Chris, you said you kind of splashed in for the fighter one.
Yeah, I'll have to change some builds around, maybe, but it's going to be a good change. So, as long as we're going in the right direction with balance, then I'm all for it. It's going to make some people unhappy, and it's going to be overpowered here, underpowered there, as is usual. But I think we're moving away from pen and paper, but we've had this discussion before. We moved away from pen and paper after about 10th level.
Hold on to that thought when we get to healing, because I'm gonna
let's not.
I'm gonna spin that one on its head a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. So one thing I do think that's cool about this, and I haven't really thought it through in its full ramifications yet, but I do, like I say, I do have a couple of melee characters, including one that's primarily a fighter, but she has to splash outside a fighter to add to her defenses because she's not a sword and board fighter. And maybe now that's not true. Maybe she can stay more within her fighter enhancement trees and still pick up her defenses, which would be kind of an interesting change of pace and maybe something fun to do.
Yeah, I think in terms of my characters, my paladin I think will definitely benefit from this. He's already kind of heavily invested in this tree, so maybe not going to be getting a whole lot extra, but just kind of the little caveat carrots that they kind of added in. But he'll still be pretty effective. I certainly don't think that they needed to improve the defensiveness other than to add the MMR. I think that was a pretty fair assessment, considering that character. The character doesn't lack in defense; it lacks in offense, which is what the Vanguard tree is going to be about. So, I think making it so that you can either use a shield or have heavier armor is good. My fighter won't necessarily be able to benefit from that because he has 2 levels of monk. He's a 12 fighter, 6 ranger, 2 monk these days. So he's using light armor, so he's not going to be able to use the greater stuff anyways. But I think it'll save him a few action points because I like getting the stance because you can get something like 25 or so physical resistance just by getting the defensive stance and the first level, the first tier of the improved stuff. So, and to have that be MMR as well, I think will be a really great benefit for him. So I think I really like a lot of the changes that are in here. Taking out the requirement to use a shield is great in the fighter stuff. So yeah, I don't really feel like I have much complaints. I did notice that there's a pretty stark difference when you start looking at the core stuff, that the Paladin is going to get an extra 20 PRR and MMR from their core enhancements. So the fighter line is going to be more offensively based because it has the shield. It has the tactical stuff in its core ability, and this is kind of true on live anyways. But I think that'll be a really nice distinction that's not there right now. I think the fighter tree is a little bit better currently on live, but now with the changes, the paladin tree will kind of have it. Not neither one's going to be necessarily be better, but one's going to be a little bit more offense, one's going to be a little bit more defense, and I think that'll be a nice balance.
I will say one thing though. I think it'll be difficult for me to justify creating a brand new melee character that isn't a blade forged paladin.
I think you could have a lot of fun with the blade for paladin. It's definitely going to be a stronger character after these changes, since you can use the greatsword, but still get the benefits of the defensive line. because you can wear heavy armor. So I think that'll be good. Bugs. I think this is actually previously a change from what they had said, that heroic sagas are not supposed to be repeatable. However, the Giant Hold heroic saga is meant to be repeatable on heroic. An upcoming change, perhaps for update 23, will make heroic 3-Rail Cove saga repeatable, although there will be a 3-day raid timer placed on it. Ultimately, the decision on whether heroic saga is repeatable or has a raid timer is and will always be made on an individual basis. There you go. And I'll take this moment to say, more sagas, please. We want more sagas.
Okay.
Bonus
Yes, they
days.
are. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Shut up. I'm talking.
It's free stuff for the same thing you were already doing. Always
Assuming
good.
we're running them all, but
Yeah.
I'm still holding out for a saga that does the entire Reaver storyline, all the way from Waterworks all the way up to Fall of Truth.
You know what? That would be outstanding. I would totally love that.
That would be a lot of quests. I mean, I think feasibly what would make that look better. We're gonna go on this rabbit trail. I would see it as a saga that would have, maybe Waterworks and SDK, a small saga, and then one for there's already one for the Giant Hold. You get the Reaver's Refuge rolled in somewhere. I think you could do it like as a saga of sagas. Basically, is where I'm going with that. So
it would have to have Tempest Spine in it too.
Yep, Tempest Spine.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It's pretty intertwined with a lot of the stuff. That and a Shavroth Super Saga as well would work pretty well, because the Shavroth whole Shavroth storyline is actually a whole thing with a Necropolis too, which could have its own saga as well. Just saying, there's lots of options around there. If you don't know, all of Necropolis leads up to the Abbot raid, and the Abbot raid leads into the Shroud and the Vale area, kind of backdoors into that. So you can have a lot of stuff in there. Anyways, bonus days, 15% Guild Renown. Sales through August 21st, you can get 25% off of character slots, questing tools, healing potions, and spell point potions. And the freebie for the week, a popular one, Small Jewel of Fortune. The code is LOOT12, one per account. You can grab that. Community news, the 105th Chronicle. If you're looking for GIFs, Jeff Hanna has you covered, apparently. Jeff likes putting GIFs in his blog. I think, let's see, I'm trying to remember what you put on your blog this week. I know there was one for the quarterstaff, right? Oh, right, that one.
Oh yeah, I've got tons of them, but they're all spread out through my blog. So I put a thread in under in the fan art part of the forums, and I took the best ones in there and I put them in that thread, so they're all in one place. Makes them easier for me to find one. This one here is my favorite one, I think. I don't know if you can see that or not.
The fountain?
Yeah, I like that. If you'll notice, the water is actually traveling uphill.
Oh, that is kind of funny.
And that's not I didn't reverse the animation or anything. That's just the way it is. So
yeah, it's kind of weird.
So yes, there's that link points to a thread on the forums that has, I don't know, 40 or so animated GIFs of various types. And other people have contributed as well, but most of it is my stuff.
They're kind of fun little video repeats. Let's see, Voodoo Spice talks about soloing Elite Stealer of Souls in a new YouTube video. Haven't watched that, but be kind of a fun one. Tricky. That was a pretty tough quest to run at level back in the day. That's in the Reaver's Refuge if you haven't been there. Let's see, the events for the week. Halfling Summer Games are continuing on Khyber. I think this week they did a new Vault of Night run. And the High Lords of Malkir on Solona are organizing weekly Tuesday Abbot runs still. The guild this week is La Santa Alianza. I might have actually successfully pronounced that name, I'm not sure. Is a Canada-based Italian guild that just hit level 105. The guild requires members to speak Italian well. Well, I'm out.
Ciao, baby.
Yeah, pretty much as much as I could do. The comment for the week. If you could only have one potion in your inventory, what would it be and why? How about you, Geoff?
Potion of Wonder. Could be anything. You never know.
All right, Chris?
If it was only one, Eternal Flask of Invisibility, because I wouldn't have any heal pots, and I wouldn't want to get hit by anything ever.
I think I'm going to go with the Endless Flask of Rum, because you would never run out of rum.
Oh, you guys are so practical. Where's your whimsy? Come on. It's more fun to explode and destroy your party. Although the Potions of Wonder don't do that anymore, but they could turn you into a tornado, or who knows.
Yeah, but you only got one, so it would just probably turn into a remove curse potion. And
it would suck if
it wasn't fun.
Yeah, or bull strength or something else equally non-fun. Nonetheless, whimsy. Must go for the whimsy.
Whimsy has its place. Let's see. Fansite News. DDOcast is joined by Cardova in the swashbuckling episode. That was last week. DDO Gamer thinks about 3 weapons he'd love to see in DDO. And the Order of Syncletica looks at the Solo Ninja Spy in a new blog post. We'll come back to your post later. Severlin looked at the changes. Let's see. There was a link to a video that Turbine takes the Ice Bucket Challenge for a good cause. I didn't recognize any of the devs in that, but there were probably about 20 people from Turbine that took the Ice Bucket Challenge. Let's see.
What is that? What is the Ice Bucket Challenge?
I'm not entirely positive what it is, but the basic thing I've noticed is you challenge someone to take the Ice Bucket Challenge, and you basically have 24 hours to take a bucket of ice water and dump it over your head, and it's all or you're supposed to donate I think it's for ALS, but I'm not positive on that.
No, you got it. That's right.
Do you know more about that, Geoff?
Nope, you said everything I know already. All I can do is confirm that that's what I know too.
Excellent. But if you're wondering why on your Facebook feed there's videos of people dumping ice buckets over their head, that's why. And I'm not sure if it's like if you dunk it over your head, that's supposed to mean that you don't have to donate, or what exactly is going. I don't know. It's trending. We'll go with that. The Twitch feeds for the week. The weekly Wednesday feed went to Lord of Stone and Eyes, and then Spring Fling this week. It was a smaller Spring Fling since several of them were off to Gen Con. Did the pit, which was slightly amusing because they did it without Lessa and Samus, who are their pit experts. So there you go. They did okay though. I actually went and watched that one just because I liked that quest, and they managed to get through it okay.
If you go with an expert, then it goes through very smoothly, and it's all really a little bit of a letdown.
There was my last guild. The guild leader would periodically bug me like, "Hey, take me. I need pit elite." Because she was one of those people that every time she TR'd, she pretty much maxed out her favor at some point or another. Because she was just kind of like that. But that was just kind of the way it went. All right. Let's go back to DDO Gamer, because you were talking about 3 weapons you'd love to see in DDO, and I think you had a few other things. So give us the rundown on your blog, and what were the 3 weapons?
We talked about a few things this week, but that specific blog post it's not just about 3 weapons that I would like. It's about 3 weapons that I think would change the way the game plays. So, because they're going through and doing this big melee pass, and that's all nice and well and good, but it's still just more of what we already have. You know, and I'd rather see new fun ways to melee, and the best way to accomplish that, I think, is with new weapons. So the 3 weapons that I was suggesting for the purposes of changing the way the game plays, number 1 is the spear. Now, the spear is kind of boring, maybe, because it's just a pointy stick, but in Dungeons & Dragons, which this game at least used to be based on, you can use it to thrust, right? It's a piercing weapon. It'd be the only 2-handed piercing weapon. You can use it with 1 hand and a shield. You can have a long one, that increases your range, although it makes it harder when people get inside that range. You can have a 2-handed version of it, so it would become very flexible. I mean, you could use it with all of the fighting styles except Swashbuckler. I can't think of a way. I guess one-handed with a buckler. Could you swashbuckle that way? That doesn't seem very swashbuckly to me. But anyway, the point is, one weapon, a lot of different uses, and it would allow people that had enough feats to stack up all these different styles to have multiple styles and still, build up a good weapon that can be used in all of them. So that was one thought. The next thought was the whip. And I think the whip has come up before, but the whip itself doesn't do much damage. In fact, if you're wearing armor, it doesn't do any damage at all in Dungeons & Dragons. It does do subdual damage, or I forget what the version of subdual damage is in the more recent. Yeah, non-lethal. That's it. So you can beat somebody down with it. You just can't really hurt them very much. And but what it does do is it gives you a really good chance to trip, which I would think would stack with vertigo. So you could end up with like a whip of vertigo and be a really tripping fool. And it's still not going to work on red names and purple names because, they're red and purple names. But, man, you could be tripping everything else. It'd be a lot of fun. You'd have to put some feats into it in order to be effective at it, and that's okay. It would be a really good strategy. The other interesting thing that a whip brings to the table is you can disarm your opponent. And this, again, would be a whole new form of crowd control that doesn't even exist in DDO today. An expert can flick his whip, wrap it around the opponent's weapon, give it a yank, and they go into a chance to disarm. So I'd really like to. I think that's something that would add a whole new dimension to melee in the game, without having to create crazy non-DDO D&D stuff like melee power and MRR and PRR. But that's just me because I'm a purist. Then finally, the third weapon that I think would be a big add to the game because of the new capabilities it would add is the Sai. And yes, that's Raphael's Ninja Turtle weapon. But that's not why, even though Ninja Turtles just came out. It's not relevant to that at all. It's because a Sai has the same attack profile as a dagger, but it also has the ability to you can disarm an opponent with it as you can with a whip. But more than that, you can actually break an opponent's weapon. So this isn't just making them put down their sword for a round or two. This is ruining it. Now, I understand, all of these would be massive coding changes because any coding change is apparently massive, and some of these would require brand new weapon animations. The size would not, but, obviously the whip and the spear would. And, what does a monster do when you break its weapon? Well, I'm hoping what it does is it just either pulls out its backup weapon if they've thought to give them backup weapons, or it just has to punch you because it has nothing else it can do. To me, that would be a good time, a new way to play, an interesting way to balance melees, even above and beyond mechanics, but with all new capabilities, and that's the point I was trying to make with that article. So there was a couple of other articles this week, but that was the one that seemed to get the most attention. So there you go. That's DDO Gamer's report for the week.
I think you could probably do spears, and just make them the quarterstaff animation, and I'd be fine with that. It'd look a little funky because it'd be a spear, but. You could add spears and halberds.
Well, they have two spears in the game now, but they're only named spears. They're really just quarterstaffs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And that wouldn't require a lot of coding. You just have to make them piercing quarterstaffs. Essentially, what they'd be. But if you're gonna add halberds to the game, we need a cosmetic Swiss Army outfit or the Swiss Guard outfit.
Oh, do we now? Okay.
With the frills
bills and pikes and Swiss guys, huh?
Oh yeah. Well, if you add, I was thinking if you add whips to the game, you're gonna need to add fedoras as hats as well.
Oh, absolutely right. Snap brim fedora, no doubt about it.
I think that would get some buys there. Anyways, see DDOCast news for the week. I had some trouble with episode 346. If you want to know what's going on, they're basically the YouTube. Something went wrong between the Hangout and YouTube when it didn't post correctly. I reposted it, but I literally had to watch the video and record the YouTube video so I could process it into an audio version and repost it so that it works a little better. That's kind of what happened there. I am still going on different servers and asking questions for prizes, building up some. What I'm doing is gathering some information, but I'm trying to get a wider player base for that, just to kind of get a lot of different answers to the questions that I'm asking, and that's going to be for a future event. So you can, if you want to play with that, if you want to answer the questions and get a prize, you can email me at ddocast@gmail.com. And I will send you some questions, and you can get a prize there. The prize is a pair of collector cards, or if you don't have the number cruncher, I can crunch something for you. That's what's going on there. And episode 350 on September 6th, tentatively at 4 p.m. Pacific time, I'll be on Khyber. I'm going to throw up an LFM, and people can come just be on the show and say hi. As long as you are respectful, you will have a pretty good chance of actually being on the show for that week. So if you are interested in that, mark your calendars for that. General gaming news, Gen Con is this weekend. If you're at Gen Con, I hope you have fun. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of a report for that. PAX Prime will be August 29th through September 1st. And we will be doing a gathering for buffs at PAX Prime in Seattle. It will be August 29th at 9 p.m. I haven't picked a place, but it will most likely be a bar near the convention center. And we'll link to a thread in the forums that I started, so you can kind of keep apprised of that. You can also follow me on Twitter, so that you can kind of have some sort of idea where we're going to be on the day of in case something needs to make a quick adjustment. And that's kind of all the news for the week. I'm just going to say it again just because I can. PAX Prime, Gathering for Buffs, August 29th at 9 p.m. and we'll link to it in the show notes.
I miss Gen Con. I was happy not going this year until it started, and now it's like, oh, I should have gone again this year.
That's okay.
Oh, well.
There's always next year.
There's always next year. Good times.
It makes it more special. If you go every year, it's not quite as special, right?
I know. That's exactly what was happening. We went 4 years in a row, and it was like, ho-hum, another Gen Con. And I was like, well, it's pretty expensive to just, go and have it be more of the same. But now that I'm not going, it's kind of sniff. I miss it. Sad face.
You had your own private Gen Con with your wife.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what we did instead, and that was very awesome.
All right, let's talk about healing. So our roundtable discussion this week is going to be kind of all around healing, kind of some tips, some tricks, that kind of stuff. So I thought we'd just kind of start with some basic stuff. Do you guys have anything, just tips for people maybe being new healers or even experienced healers? Just what are some tips that you have, basic tips on healing?
Well, the first question I should ask is, healing, are we going to start with...
We're talking like you are the healer. You are the primary healer.
Well, I mean, the primary class that everyone's going to pick for a healer is cleric. What most people may not realize coming into D&D or even DDO is the cleric is less of your three pillars archetype of a healer. Generally, you're not just spinning plates as a cleric. And what I mean by that is staring at health bars, trying to keep them all up at the same time. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do, but the first and most important thing is know where your heals are and know what they are. Anything else to add to that?
So I will mention we'll talk about specific classes and how they play after, but I just kind of want to start with just general healing stuff.
Okay. The number one healing tip is to make sure you understand how to select a character in a hurry by using the F buttons. So if you are responsible as primary healer, personally, I'm not good enough at it to do anything other than stare at the health bars. It's really hard for me to be useful beyond that, unless I'm playing my my battle cleric. But you need to be able to go, oh, character 4 is in trouble. I need to be able to, consistently and on demand, very quickly go to that character and select him and throw a heal at him. And for me, that's I hit F4 to get to the 4th character down, and then I hit whatever number key is the heal I want to throw at him. So, and I on all of my characters that do healing, I have the heal spells in the same hotbar position, because otherwise I have to learn where they are every time I swap characters, and I'm already a bad player. That just makes it worse. So, 4, 5, and 6 are going to be a cheap heal, a better heal, and a mass heal on all of my characters, so I can just hit, F4, 5, boom, and I just threw a decent single-person heal at that character who needed it the most. or I can hit F4-6 and I hit that guy and everybody around him. Now that's kind of an old school way to heal, but I think that is the old school way to heal. There's newer tactics that have to do with just throwing on your radiance and moving up to the front line and just kind of throwing out a mat. That's a whole different approach. But you said, how do you be main healer? And to me, that's how you do it. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, my characters don't necessarily have the same hotbars, but pretty much when we're talking about my bard, cleric, favorite soul, and druid, heal scrolls are in the same spot on all of those. The other stuff may not be, but that one's pretty much always the same key, or at least sometimes I'll move it off my main hotbar, move it back. I generally myself, I actually don't use the F keys to target, and I'm a little weird in that. Definitely the F keys can be very helpful. My problem with that is I for whatever reason it doesn't necessarily translate and associate which keys are which for the different players. And the other part of that is like if you're in a raid group, you need to reach F12, and that can be a little harder to do while you're still moving around. So what I generally do is most of my characters I actually run in mouse look mode, so I'm using my mouse to use the camera. My healers tend not to do that, at least in heavy healing situations. I use my mouse. My mouse pretty much hovers around the life bars, and that's how I select and heal. I know that's not necessarily for everyone, but that's kind of the way that I've done it. And part of the reason for that is just being able to reach the keys. Like I said, if you're in a 12-person raid group, reaching F12 and still being able to move effectively is kind of tricky. And I think just something to kind of my 2 cents to throw into this very large open part of the discussion is move your feet. Healers, I've seen a lot of healers just kind of stand in one place and keep healing, and they get pummeled, particularly when you get into harder difficulties. You want to move your feet. You don't have to stand there to heal. You can move around a little bit. Sometimes you need to move because you need to get back in range of someone that you're trying to heal, because they need to move. Just because someone moves out of your range does not mean that they did something bad. Just putting that out there. You want to make sure you don't get run over, so you kind of need a little bit of awareness, and it can be pretty tricky to kind of be watching that little section of your screen that's a life bar, all the life bars, but also kind of be aware of things that you can't see that are behind you. And trust me, I sometimes fail in this. But the things that I have right here, don't get pummeled. Don't stand somewhere and just get beat up till you're dead, or you spend so much time healing yourself you can't heal anybody else. Don't get run over. There's a lot of places, particularly in raids, where people are kiting stuff. Stay out of their kiting path. Now, kiters have a path, right? Don't run your clerics over, but clerics don't move into the kiting path. And 3, don't get outmaneuvered. And what I mean by this is, particularly talking about tanking, or other stuff, move with the group. It's not, the group shouldn't just be like running out of your range all the time, but at the same time, you can't just stay in one spot to heal. You have to move with the group, right? And part of that's just stay in range as well. So move your feet, and I find that helps really well if you're in mouse look mode, and I can use the keyboard to move around a lot and use my mouse to click on different things that I need. I still use like the number keys for a hotbar action. So let's talk about some stuff that's more specific. Let's talk about quicken and concentration. Do you need them? Go.
Yes. No question. At all.
No. Sorry, I disagree.
Have to have quicken. Have to have quicken. That's good. Let's disagree. All right, let's discuss.
You first.
I never, ever want to fail a self-heal. And it still happens with lag every once in a while, but I'm not... The one time that you're using quicken is... Well, the one time that you're using a full heal on self is probably the time that you really need it. Obviously. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be using a full heal. You'd be using something else, like some hots or something to get you back up. But if there is a really fast mob that's punching me in the face and I take half health, I need to be able to heal myself to full so that I can get myself in a better position. And if I get interrupted, then I'm dead, and a dead healer doesn't heal. That's my point of view.
Dead
Yeah,
healer
those are
doesn't do much
valid
of anything.
points. Those are valid points. I wouldn't argue with any of them. But I would say that I don't think you ever need both of them. You know, if you're going to load up on if you're going to load up a lot on concentration, then you're probably not going to need quicken. If you're going to take quicken, then you probably don't need concentration. And I don't think it's very common where you really need to have either. If you unless you are meleeing. If you're running up front and getting yourself into trouble on purpose, then in those cases, yes, you're going to need quicken. But if you're a stand back healer who's doing party support and healing, you're probably not drawing a lot of aggro. You might have diplomacy or another way to shed aggro when it comes to you. In a situation like that, you can probably be better. You probably don't need it. I think that most epic elite players would probably sneer at me for saying that, but nonetheless, I feel like I can play an effective healer at that level without it. I would also say that I think most epic elite players are going to sneer at a healer in the first place because you're supposed to heal yourself. But that's a whole other conversation, which I don't think we've gotten to yet.
Yeah, I'm not really planning on talking about like self-healing. We're mostly going to limit this conversation to primaries or secondary kind of healers. So we're healing, like that's what we're doing right now, not just like self-healing kind of stuff. Anyways, I'm going to disagree. Quicken and concentration. If you're going to be a primary healer, you want both, in my opinion. And here's why. You can't quicken scrolls. And particularly for newer folks healing, and if you're new to a raid, it's not so much a problem these days, but it used to be. There were a lot of places where you really needed to use heal scrolls to augment your healing so you didn't run out of spell points during raids, particularly, so you could keep healing, right? You can't quicken a heal scroll. You can quicken heal spells, which is important. Here's how concentration works. The DC for your concentration check when you're using a scroll casting a spell is based on the damage you take. So it's going to be the spell, at least if it's coded the same way that pen and paper reads, it's the spell level plus the damage you take. So the reason why I like both is concentration. Well, most of the time, if you're not in melee, you can get away. You'll still maybe be pummeled by archers, and archers tend not to do as much damage. So making a concentration check while using a scroll is generally feasible, even when you're being hit by archers. On the flip side, if something else hits you, we're talking about just epic hard stuff hits you for 100 points of damage all the time. So if you think about that, a level 1 spell is going to have a concentration check of 101 if you get hit for 100 points of damage. And concentration generally doesn't get that high. So just relying on concentration is going to leave you lacking. There'll be times where you won't get a heal off, and people are going to die because of it, which can be bad. Not having concentration means you're not going to be able to use scrolls as much. And there was one point where I did a lesser reincarnation and forgot to give my bard concentration, and it was noticeable. It was very noticeable that he didn't have concentration and was failing heal scrolls a lot more often. It was surprisingly noticeable, actually. And again, it's the archers that really were kind of doing it, because they can hit you a lot more reliably, but they tend to do a lot less damage and stuff that can come up and pummel you.
Yeah, concentration for archers, quicken for everything else.
Yeah.
But
so if you want to be, if you're building your character around being a primary heal bot, that may not be the only thing it does, and hopefully it's not the only thing it does. But if you want to be a primary bomber, really good healer that can solo heal high-end raids, get both. You're going to want them both.
Okay, I still have a vote, right?
Yeah.
Look, I think that you're talking about playing at 20th level. I really do. And this is just my opinion. and obviously I'm outnumbered here, so I'm only going to, I won't, I'm not going to continue to disagree with you guys. I'm going to go through this little segment of disagreement and then move on. But when you're regularly taking more damage than concentration can help you with, once you start getting to certain levels at certain difficulties. I was playing with my gamer girl a couple of months ago. She rolled an 87 on something and failed. And we weren't even at Epic Elite at Endgame. And that's common as you get to certain high levels. At that point, concentration is no use to you. You would have been better off taking those spell points and putting them in something else. Or not spell points, skill points. And as far as the ability to throw a heal scroll, I mean, that's, by the time you're level 28, you're using heal scrolls to heal people up between fights. If you're depending on a heal scroll to keep somebody up during a fight, they're already dead. So you need a more reliable way to make sure you get your spell off than either of those two. Now
that goes back to move your feet.
Exactly, that is correct. That is how you're a successful primary healer at high levels and harder difficulties. So, anyway, if you have the feats, I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking them. Obviously, having Quicken is going to burn you through your spell points faster, but, I mean, maybe you have really a lot of spell points, or you don't mind going through mnemonic pots. Concentration, hey, clerics don't have a lot of good skills. You might as well throw it into there. It's not going to hurt you. I'm just arguing that you can't rely on them, especially as the game gets harder and harder and harder. Okay, now I'll stop disagreeing.
Disagreement is not a bad thing. I mean, it just adds more to the discussion. That's how we, learn things and make things better. So, disagree all you want.
I'll just say this in kind of closing from this little segment, and we'll move on. Concentration is going to be more useful at lower levels than Quicken, right? Because you can have a much smaller spell point pool, so you don't necessarily want to spend an extra 10 spell points on Quicken for every spell. At some point in the game, and I would say Desert's probably still kind of a point where a lot of players would say that suddenly the damage and defenses kind of change in the game, kind of around that level. Quicken's going to become more valuable because you're not going to be able to make as many concentration checks. And certainly, like when I'm saying get both, I'm kind of gearing towards, this is if you want to be the guy that's going to really be a very successful, very reliable healer, that will help do that. And it can save you a lot of spell potions. Now, granted, spell potions are pretty easy to get these days, and you can have a huge stack of them, and you may not care to burn through them, and that's totally fine, and you probably don't need concentration heal scrolls then, and that's totally valid. But if you want to be the guy that a week after Fall of Truth is coming out, you're running it on Epic Hard, and you're not using any potions, any spell point potions, you're probably going to be using a lot of heal scrolls, at least some heal scrolls and some spell points. So you probably want both. So there's a lot of different ways you can kind of go about that. Let's talk about wands, scrolls, and potions, and how to use them and when to use them. I guess I can kind of kick this one off. Wands, until you can use heal scrolls, wands can kind of be your main supplement. Once you get heal scrolls, that's probably going to be your primary healing supplement to your spell points. And then you'll probably mostly just use wands to heal up during fights. It's not necessarily germane to the discussion we're having, but these days I kind of tend to send my wands to lower level characters that can use them that aren't primary healing kind of characters, and just kind of use them to heal up in between fights. But that's kind of where wands kind of kick in. Scrolls, once you can use scrolls, can be really effective at kind of augmenting your spell point pool. I personally don't use Cure Mass scrolls. Back when Lord of Blades came out, I bought a whole stack of Mass Cure scrolls, and I am not joking. I still have probably 80% of the scrolls that I bought for that across the different characters that I bought them for, just because I never sold them and kept them. So there's that. And then restoration scrolls and resurrection scrolls. Those can be really helpful because you can save not only spell points with those, but you can save spell slots. Mm-hmm. Particularly when you start getting into, I think Greater Restoration is a level 8 spell, and you can get it in scrolls. You can buy them in a vendor for scrolls. You may want that extra spell slot there at that level. So some things to consider when talking about scrolls. As far as potions go, when we're talking about curative stuff, wands for curative stuff, so this is remove curse, blindness, poison, disease, that kind of stuff, ditch the wands for those. Go with potions, and here's why. You can use those potions on other players without having to switch to them. So if you're in a major healing situation, you can have your heal scrolls in your hand, and then, hey, your tank gets cursed, use a curse potion. Saves you some spell points, and it's not something that you have to switch to interrupt your healing routine or your healing timing. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to add here.
The spell's really more handy there. I mean, if someone has a curse, I like to use the spell. I'm probably going to end up using more major pots, but I also like to... I'm going to go with a counterpoint on this, but I like to say get your own curses if you're in something like a Caught in the Web, or back in the day maybe Vision of Destruction, or something with the healing curse, because it's too much for one person to manage every single one person's curses and take care of all the other business. Someone might disagree with me on that. It's supposed to be your job to do that, but
I would agree with that. The only thing I would note just really quick is sometimes it's like Sulamades would curse you, and you'd use your curse potion, and then he'd curse you right away again, and your potion would be on timer. And then it's really helpful for your healer to be able to kind of just click a potion really quick.
In that case, I usually keep the spell there because I don't have to worry about range. I don't have to be that close. I think the spell itself has a little bit longer range than a potion, but there's...
I don't know. I've never had that problem. I'm not sure.
Is it the guild potion that lets you do that, or is it standard potions?
Standard potions do
standard.
that.
Okay.
Guild potions, I don't know if they changed it, but they don't. Yeah. They did this weird thing with the potions, because guild potions they made so you can't cast on others, but you could use them while raging.
Mm-hmm.
And some people who have played this game for a long time will probably notice that my line of thinking is fairly old school in terms of healing. Back when
Yes, it is.
Smell point potion, or your smell point pool used to be a lot smaller, and we were slightly weaker, and some raid fights were a little longer. But they can still be applied to, like, if you're doing Epic Elite, Temple of Deathworm, or Fire Peaks, you're probably going to be using a lot more scrolls. Anyways.
I agree to the extent that replacing spell slots with scrolls is very effective. I like that. So I agree with your point about restoration and resurrection and raise dead, although probably resurrection. It's just easier to use a scroll than it is to waste a spell slot, because at those levels, those spell slots are really, really important, and there's a lot of good spells at that level. I'd rather use wands than pots to take care of the minor afflictions that occur during the game, just because so much cheaper. You get 50 uses out of a wand, and I don't have to worry about keeping them in my inventory because they stay there for a long time. And most of those afflictions are going to get taken care of by the next heal spell anyway.
It's true, and that's important to note. Heal cures blindness, poison, disease. It's good to know.
Yeah, and I guess what you said about we're talking about this from an old school perspective, I really feel like we are. And it's an interesting conversation, but the fact is, I only have one high-level cleric now. I won't take him on Epic Elites, but I'll take him on anything else. And what his style is he turns on Radiant Servant and goes and melees stuff. And if people seem to be lagging a little bit in their healing, he'll throw a mass cure. And if people are lagging a lot, he'll throw a mass heal. And every now and then, one time in 30 or 40, we'll be running a quest where he has to actually step back and do old school healing. But it's really the exception. Most of the time he's able to keep everybody up just with his radiant healing. Most people have healing amplification.
And a lot of people have Cocoon these days too.
Yeah, and he's got a pretty, he's he's spec'd out so that his radiant healing is very effective. So, he's rocking 100 a tick or more if people have amplification, and that's pretty effective at keeping people up, all the way up until, the very end game stuff.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. And some of what I'm saying is definitely the extreme end of things, and you can find a balance for questing. I mean, I'm not this hardcore conservatory during most of my questing, but it's stuff to keep in mind too. And I want to make sure that I kind of cover some of the idea of okay. Maybe you need some for the people that aren't haven't experienced maybe healing an Epic Elite Temple of Deathworm. It's a much different experience than healing a random epic hard quest.
The funny thing is, I have videos of that, and in both attempts, we lagged out and had to complete with the GM.
Oh, really? Ouch.
Yeah. That's what I sort of set up my healer to do, and Turn Undead wasn't as effective as it should be in there, but the cleric that I actually run is a Turn Undead charisma spec, and most people are going to roll their eyes at that. But I ended up doing a lot of math on it, and with the new Drowned Priest Torch with 18 Morning Lord, 2 Paladin split, you can get the turning from 2 Paladin up to make up for the loss of 2 levels. You get the saves from the Paladin, and the +6 from the Morning Lord, and the +6 from the Past Lives Cleric. So Turn Undead is effective up to Epic Elite Legend of Two-Toed Bias.
You can do a lot with turning, and it takes a little more investment than your average ability, but it's definitely viable.
Mm-hmm. I ran Haunted Halls of Evening Star with a turning cleric, and it was an eye opener. And he was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, you'll clear rooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you find someone who's done the investment, it's pretty impressive. And if you see some old school guys, including myself, kind of roll your eyes at turning because for a long time it wasn't that good. You couldn't do it. But anyways,
as far as the raid healing goes, if you're doing Epic Elite, something like that, the one thing to note is you're not going to catch everything. Being a healer means keeping up the stable parties, but there's always going to be a situation where someone's just going to they're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're going to die. So Epic Elite is a lot about managing conditions and getting raises going and getting people back on their feet as quickly as possible so that they can kill stuff. But it's a whole different ballgame. And I carry Cocoon on my healer, actually, as a preventative. It's a twist and the range thing. It goes pretty much wherever you want it to go, so I don't have to worry about walls or range. Another tip I would say is extend. Not extend, excuse me, enlarge, because enlarge gets things all the way across the arena. In Fire, in Fall of Truth, and in Deathworm, all those areas are big enough to where your cures aren't going to reach the whole way, and there's going to be someone, be it a Khyber here, a tank there. You may not be in the middle at that moment because you're trying to deal with other problems, and getting a heal to them can really mean life or death.
Yeah, healing enlarge can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Indeed. So what I want to do next is we'll kind of go through the kind of different classes, and then kind of touch on reconning Pale Masters, and then finish with raids. So we'll start with clerics, and what we're really going to talk about is kind of what's unique about these classes when it comes to healing. And for clerics, I think it really comes down to the auras and the burst, the Radiant Aura and the burst.
Radiant Servant, yep.
And I would say, my own opinion, and there's people that disagree with me on this, I think clerics, if you're going to talk about a heal bot, I think clerics are the strongest heal bot. I think they can get the best healing. That's been my experience. Maybe that's because I can't build a favorite soul. I'm not sure. But Cleric for me has always been my primary healer. He's always been a cleric, and he's always been the strongest healer I've ever had, compared to the other ones. And the R's and the bursts certainly help with that. But as far as healing on a cleric, I would say the one thing that I would note when you're talking about R's and bursts is it's great to be kind of in the fight and in the front. I'm just going to submit that that's not always the best way to heal. If you're using your aura to heal the Truthful One tank, you are going to take a lot more damage and you're going to spend some time on your butt. Just saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add for clerics. Just anything you want to say on clerics?
Yeah, I mean the aura is the biggest benefit, and there's a couple of side benefits that you may not notice immediately, but there are a lot of synergies with the Radiant Aura and certain Epic Destinies that will keep your charges up higher because it counts, each tick of the aura counts as a positive spell cast, so it has some good synergy with Divine Crusader, has some good synergy with Exalted Angel, and you get to keep your caster levels in both of those EDs because they're divine, so you get your 5 caster levels from the core and the ED. But the bursts are really great because they work as a restoration.
Yep.
So you can clear most conditions, other than, afflictions like curses, just by throwing a burst.
Yep, even negative levels. It's awesome.
Yeah, it can clear a few. And I don't even carry restoration now on my cleric. And most people are going to say, what? But I like to use other spells there, and that saves me a spell. It's a class benefit. I'm going to use a class benefit.
The only reason I would say what to that is, what spells did you use instead? Because really the reason why I have all levels of restoration, and mostly it's because I couldn't find anything I wanted to slot into the spell.
I don't know. I probably took something weird, like a Night Shield or something.
Hey, nothing wrong with being immune to magic missiles. That could be handy.
Yeah.
Night Shield is a great spell.
I don't know. My next healer project is going to be an Intima cleric. It's going to be a cleric. He's going to be spec'd out for Radiance like the one I have now, but he's going to bulk up his Intimidate, and he's going to try and be the tank. And everybody can gather around him and get healed. That's my next project.
Clonks were really popular for a while. Like 3 monk, 17 cleric. Let's talk about favored souls. What do you like about favored souls for healing?
Well, they have that huge spell pool. But I think I agree that a cleric is a better choice purely from a healing point of view. I think a favored soul is a more balanced member of your party because he's going to be able to add more offensive spellcasting capabilities. And, depending on how he's built, some probably not very top-shelf melee. But mainly he just brings all those spell points to the table.
I'm laughing because I tried to make a melee favored soul and it was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, it's.
I tried to use longswords and splash some monk and use rolling steel strike, and it was terrible. Terrible. I'm sure you can.
I have one that's coming up through the ranks. Yeah, it can be done. I have one that's coming up through the ranks now. She's made it up to about 16, which is right when the game first starts to get hard, and is still holding up pretty well. But she's a favored soul with a paladin splash. She's going to like the new paladin trees a lot. I don't know. I've tried to do it as a pure favored soul a couple of times. I just can't get it to work.
Yeah.
You really got to make use of all your cures, like every single cure that you have. And favored soul's advantage is both the spell point pool, but I think that gets negated by what I'm about to say, and is speed. You're going to have to add a lot of metamagics to get it to match the positive that you can get out of Cleric Radiant. So you might have to throw a lot of cures instead of just straight heals. But favored souls are going to lead in cast time by about 75% to half the time to throw a spell. So you don't have to. If they're a more effective mass heal user, and I don't use mass heal on my cleric either. but they will get through that heal animation a lot faster.
Good
So
point.
that's their advantage. That and maybe positioning. If you go pure, you can use your wings to, you won't need to take enlarge because maybe you can just wings over to the dude that needs the heal. You can just fly over there.
Also, want to mention, depending on which deity you go with, you can get a free cure spell as well. It's like cure light wounds, but you actually get a pretty good bang for the buck out of it.
Yeah, a lot of it really
Oh,
depends on player skill, I think. If you know what you're doing, if you know your limitations and your strengths, a favored soul can be just as good as a cleric. In some cases, better. It just depends on if you're more of a fast player that can respond to small issues quickly. Cleric has the ability to deal with big issues, or they have a lot more heals over time. But favored soul is really the snappy option of the two.
Yeah, I would say favored soul, you're gonna have a much more viable offensive capabilities. The thing with clerics is the thing that makes a cleric a quote stronger healer is the radiant servant tree, is a really strong healing tree, and it raises your caster level, your maximum caster level on spells. So when you're talking about using mass cure spells, when they're gonna hit certain benchmarks of caster level, you can get a little bit beyond that. But let's not say that you can't be a very successful healer as a favorite soul. It's a little different. You don't get the aura, but you get more spell points. So it's a trade-off there.
You get an Archon.
You also get an Archon, which can be a lot of fun.
That's the level 12 core benefit. You can either get the Archon or you can get bursts. Archon is the offensive, burst is the defensive.
Yep. All right, let's talk about druids. I think druids have a much different style of healing, because most of their spells are heal over time spells.
Yeah, they have to be more proactive. They have to throw the spells out before you've really taken all you. They can't wait till you're hurting. They got to know who's going to hurt and throw the spell first.
Which is easy if they're a tank.
Yeah, a druid can be a very effective primary healer. My gamer girl plays her druid, and she doesn't like to admit it, but she's usually the primary healer too, and she does a fine job. Of course, she's a really good player, unlike me.
Hey, you guys want to see something cool?
Sure.
Go for it.
Let me see if I can get this working. Give me 5 seconds.
You would say just while you're working on that, druids are it's a definitely different flavor of healing, but it can be very viable. You still get the heal spell. It's a little higher spell level. The one thing with druids, and this applies to me because my druid is a wolf melee. You can't use scrolls while you're in an animal form, so a little tricky.
Hey, check it out. You guys want to raid?
Very nice. Well done, sir.
Very good. Okay. It's snowing on Fire Mountain.
Pretty much.
Let's see. Anything else you want to say about druids? I mean, it's just the heal over time thing is kind of the big thing with druids. Generally,
They don't get. Do they get mass heal?
I don't think so.
That's a bit, but they get the mass dot healings.
Yeah.
But they don't get mass heal the spell. And heal is a plus because not only does it do a bunch of healing, but it also does all the remedies. So
true, but regeneration does negative levels, which heal does not. I think it does negative levels.
I gotta still stick with a cleric as being a better choice if you're going to be a pure healer. But having said that, I've also been arguing this whole show that at endgame nobody's a pure healer, and a druid is a much more useful addition to your party than a pure healer because he can still do primary healing to an extent, not quite as good as a cleric, but he's definitely bringing offensive spell casting and or melee to the table, and he's probably good at both of them, really good. So there you go. Probably not as good a healer, but probably a better party member.
My cleric is a pretty darn good healer, but he he can do okay if he has to kill stuff, but he's definitely not a killer. My druid is much reversal because I can kind of either be in a melee role, supplemental heals, or I can go out of animal form, grab some scrolls, and really go into healing mode. And I would say like we're talking about scrolls earlier. Like my druid is a character that really kind of relies on scroll healing to kind of augment his healing, and a large part of that is because the heal over times are great. However, he's limited in his I need to heal now capabilities. So having that heal spell, that heal scroll to augment the heal spell, and his heal over time effects really comes in handy, and something I've really noticed with playing him. And as a side benefit, because he has a couple levels of monk, he can punch people in the face with scrolls as though he was using unarmed combat. So it's more effective.
Yeah. Good tactics.
Reading is fundamental. Pow! This
Little,
pen is mightier than the sword. Pow! Oh, these aren't funny except in my head, are they?
When we're talking about mass heal, though, like I personally don't utilize mass heal during healing very much. The problem with mass heal, it can be a really useful spell.
It's so slow.
Yeah, the timing is really slow, which, and I'll say, is really actually a good thing. Back when we went up to level 20 and got mass heal spell, I was actually kind of wondering how much that was going to completely break the game and how things reacted. And we're talking about healing. Just because if you could cast a mass heal as fast as you could cast heal, I mean, it would just be a completely different ballgame when you're talking about healing. And the slower casting time actually, I think, really balanced it out and did a good job of not letting that break the game. But it can be useful, but it's very slow. So it's kind of like using a heal over time spell with a druid. You have to anticipate to use it, because if you wait till you need to cast it, you're probably not going to get off in time. One kind of tactic I've found that kind of helps get around that is if you throw a quick mass cure spell first, and then follow it immediately with the mass heal. That can kind of buy you enough time to kind of get it off. So,
good tactic.
I have background envy with Chris. I feel like I'm sitting in such an old-fashioned video box now. It'll never be the same, dude. Never.
The bar has been raised.
It has.
All right, let's talk about the bards. Bards generally, especially these days, are a lot easier to heal with because you can get the heal spell from Spellsinger. They have a smaller spell point pool, but with all the enhancements now, I think my bard's sitting at somewhere like 350 positive spell power. Because you can get like 90 spell power out of War Chanter now.
Yeah, that competes with clerics. I mean, they said in the development that we didn't want these guys to be pure competition with clerics, but I'm not a one-trick pony with a cleric. I like to use a lot of Blade Barrier, Sunburst, Divine Crusader, all that stuff. So I don't really invest too hard into positive spell power, but you've probably got more positive than I do on my cleric.
But you've still got that limited spell pool and also a limited selection of spells available to you.
Yeah, so, which is where scrolls come in a lot handy here. Now we're talking about restoration scrolls. Bards don't even get the spell restoration, so using the scrolls there is a really big thing. But yeah, I was using a bard as a primary healer before they even got the heal spell, and again, using heal scroll. I think using a heal scroll on a bard can be really helpful because you kind of get an extra heal button. You're not necessarily going to have as many heal buttons depending on what your bard is and how kind of splashy he is.
Do you go the full way on Scroll Mastery? I forgot. We might have talked about that earlier. Like 50% or 75%?
We didn't. If I have a character that can take Scroll Mastery, I pretty much always take it in full, assuming that they can cast Heal Scroll.
Okay.
If you can cast a Heal Scroll, I take it full. Just because it's... And part of the reasoning behind that is less about initially its potency, but it's as much as possible I want a heal scroll to replace a heal spell in my timing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So it's on a separate cooldown. That was the whole point of it all along.
Exactly.
Right.
And when you're talking about heal as a single target, maybe I want to hit 2 different people with heal spells, um, and just to kind of get around that timing, I want to have that. And partly the other reason that, and we'll talk about this later, but just like when we're talking about like rogues and artificers and scroll healing and stuff like that. Anyways, bards. I would say I wouldn't say that they're too powerful. They're not going to replace a cleric because, like, my bard is really strong in healing. He's got the heal spell from Spellsinger. He's got a lot of stuff from War Chanter. He's not a great melee. He finally splashed into Swashbuckler. After we talked about Swashbuckler last week, I took a little more Swashbuckler in him. But this is a bard that is built to be a healing, crowd controlling, lousy DPS bard. I mean, that's kind of the way that he's built. He can chip in DPS, but he's not great.
What's his enchantment DC?
I don't know because it just changed and it got a lot higher. But I was running Epic Card Fire Peaks, and I was landing the Mass Hold.
Nice.
The Mass
Very
Hold in
nice.
Slam.
Okay.
I was mostly augmenting that by I'd cast a Hypnotism first and then land it.
Okay.
But I was pretty much hitting when the Hellhounds came out. I was pretty much grabbing all the Hellhounds with that. So he's got a pretty decent DC for sure. But yeah, otherwise I think they kind of play like a cleric or a favorite soul. It's just if you don't have the capstone or you have the heal spell, you're gonna rely more on the heal scrolls, and a lot of it comes down to time, like just timing and having enough buttons to heal with. Now let's talk about Artificer, because this is where it gets a little more interesting.
Yeah, my Artificer's had to be Prime Healer a couple of times. And she does surprisingly well.
You'd be surprised how much mileage you can get off an Artificer healing.
I would never attempt to take her on an endgame as the primary healer, but I mean, she's been backup healer at endgame stuff, and she's been primary on everything else, and it's quite surprising. The only downside is that it's hard for her to heal herself, because her primary healing method is she throws potions at people, bing, bing, and it's a really cool looking animation. There, I have a potion, and it explodes and heals all over everybody in a big splurge of positive spell power. But it's hard to do on yourself. Because you can't throw on yourself.
So hug a wall.
Well, that doesn't always work. Sometimes the wall isn't where it looks like it is.
Or be able to recon
You'll throw, and your hand will be the exit point of the potion is on the other side of that wall.
Yeah, or something like that, or the wall's further away than it looks like, or the visual wall and the actual barrier wall aren't in the same place. Or anyway, so.
If you want to practice throwing potions, go play in Tomb of the Blighted for a while.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
So but in this case, it's really not a lack of practice. It's just it's not always feasible to do when you've got a bunch of guys chasing you and you're jumping and twisting and trying to stay alive. That's not the time to be able to accurately throw a potion on yourself.
I think
other than that, they're great healers.
If we're talking about admixtures like that, I think the real problem there is that it's so slow. Like you don't think it's that slow, but it's not like taking out a throne potion like the the Flask of Sun or whatever.
Oh, right, which you go.
That's really quick, and it's affected by your throwing. But Admixture is actually a spell and its own animation that looks a lot like a wand ray cast. And I just think it's really too slow. However, like I stopped using admixtures at about 16. Maybe even a little bit earlier, and that's the point where you can afford a Construct Essence feat so that you can reconstruct yourself. But that's the main problem. The only thing I do use, and which is really valuable, is Curative Admixtures remove Curse for Caught in the Web, because
it's mass.
It's an AoE curse removal. The only other AoE curse removal is Monk's Fist of Light finisher. Or not Fist of Light,
with the Shinto enhancement.
Yeah, the Shinto burst curse removal, condition removal.
Well, but it's not just the admixtures. I mean, that's the fun part. But Artificers are the best scroll healers there are. Plus, for whatever Warforged are in your party, and there's likely to be plenty, in that case, the Artificer is probably the best healer of Warforged. Although I don't like to play that role very much. I don't want to be the pure healer on my Artificer. I want to pew pew pew, and mainly I want to be an offensive caster on her. But anyway, she can be a good healer. I'd rather she not have to be.
You can get away with a lot with an Artificer. The thing that, again, this is where scrolling comes in handy, is the number of buttons you have to heal becomes a limiting factor. And I'll say this was before Caught in the Web came out, and we went up to 25. Back when cap was 20, I did solo heal a Tower of Despair on an Artificer. And this was before, because nowadays with the enhancement system, you actually get a second Cure Serious Wound pot tossing thing. So back then, I only had the one of those heal scrolls, and that was kind of it, because you didn't have Epic Destinies either. And it was actually surprisingly effective. It was only a normal Tower of Despair, but and we had a Pale-Master tanking Sulaimanis, and I think there was a rogue that was kind of like spot healing in the last part as well. But as we didn't have any other primary healer. That was my job as the Artificer, and it was actually surprisingly successful. So you can get a lot of mileage out of an Artificer, and I have certainly considered being the primary healer on my Artificer for Temple of Deathworm. But for some reason, every time it's like the last spot, a more effective healer joins the group. So I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But I expect it's coming. It will probably happen sooner or later.
Here's the thing. If anyone's listening to this and doesn't have a healer, roll a healer. Maybe even roll a cleric, because it's a different gameplay experience. There's a lot of differences between DDO and other games as far as healing goes. So I mean, you don't have to just be that dude who sits in the back and spins plates and looks at health bars, but it's got some merits to it. And I'm just saying this because when Epic Orchard comes out, we're going to need a lot more of the archetypal healers, I'm thinking. Because that's something that they know as developers is happening in the game, where everyone has their own rejuvenation cocoon, they have their own blade forged heal, they have
healing spring,
UMD for their own heal scrolls, they have the new pots from the store, silver flame pots. There are tons of methods for self-healing, and I think they know that, when 0.5% of your server population is a primary healer, then, we're going to try and design some content for that. I was hoping. We'll see. That's kind of why I've been, staying on the undead rolling train. But Agildy and I have been working on this turn undead spec, and hopefully the HD aren't out of range, but yeah, roll a healer, because there's going to be a lot of work for you to do out in the undead land that is Epic Orchard coming soon.
It's definitely a different gameplay experience. You can play a whole different game playing healer, for sure.
Yeah, I played a healer in Warhammer Online, and that's kind of sort of the same thing as WoW, where you have one or two hot bars and they're all the same abilities, and all the healers are pretty much built the same. There's one way to do it well, and then maybe two other ways to do it not so well, which is completely different from D&D. I mean, you can make so many other choices, but actually I played a healer in Star Wars Online too, the new one, Old Republic.
Right, I did that too.
Yeah, that one was really healy. I mean, that's all you did. You have, some things to kill mobs, and I think the mobs are scaled better to fight just against healer classes. Like, they get weaker. Yeah, mobs get weaker so that your weakness doesn't fall short. But it's way different. yes, there is still some of that, hit this dude, hit that dude, he's low, he's low. But a lot of the time, you're not having to worry about too much of your heals. There really hasn't been a situation where someone said, we have to have a healer for this in a long time. Shroud was, and it's funny, you still see people saying, we need healers for the Shroud. Not really. But
You want to talk about needing healers? Go back to the days when we didn't have the heal spell, and we were still running Vault of Night, Hero Method. That was interesting.
Yeah, the Vault of Nightmare.
That was you send one, maybe two guys in to attack the dragon. Everyone else pulled out a wand and started whipping.
Oh, the hero method. There you go.
Yeah.
That's why there was a hero method.
This was back before you had the heal spell, so pretty much anyone who could would wand whip the hero. Maybe you were lucky and you had a couple, and then you went for it.
That was a big benefit of Rangers. You could use cure wands.
Yeah. Anyways, speaking of Rangers, we'll talk about this is kind of everyone else briefly. Just say that over the years, rogues and sorcerers in particular, because they can achieve heal scrolls a little more easily than other classes that we haven't talked about. You can actually, throughout the years, less so now again because it's a lot easier to get healing, but those guys can pull out some scrolls and supplement the heals. If you need to, maybe you're doing a harder difficulty raid, and you really want to have two healers, but you can't find another one. For certain points in time, you can have a rogue or a sorcerer kind of pull out some, or someone else who can use heal scrolls, pull out scrolls and really kind of supplement that healing. If you want your character to be versatile for that, I would definitely say get at least a couple tiers of scroll mastery. It really makes you a little bit more versatile in that.
I would argue the game has passed that approach by. That's really good for self-healing.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's useful for party healing anymore. Pure scroll healing. It's just not fast enough and doesn't do enough heal per use.
And I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I would not disagree with that assessment.
And it's a shame, and I made this point in a blog article a few months ago that, the whole game is out of balance. They stopped growing all of the systems at level 20. Except Epic Destinies, So it would be nice if they came up with scrolls that were usable and fun and helpful in epic content, and wands too, and crafting. If they grew all of the systems up to level 30 and not just the character classes. But until such time as they do, I don't believe scroll casting is really a viable endgame approach.
That's fair. So Pale Masters, do either of you guys carry harm on your healers at all?
No.
I did for a minute. When my cleric was level 20, I was playing around with the new enhancements in the enhancement pass, and you can do the necromancy tree. You don't carry, I don't carry harm because the targeting is so horrible. You have to be facing the person, and you have to be at like half the range heal goes, which is really ineffective. So if it were equal to heal as far as casting goes, where you don't have to face them and it's not half range, then yes, I would probably carry it. But because you can't, I'm not going to worry about it. If I was worried about healing a whole party of PMs, really who can heal themselves, I would take the Necrotic Burst, which is actually part of the core enhancements in Divine Disciple.
Yeah, I still carry harm myself. It's definitely a little cumbersome to use, but it's come in handy a few times now and then.
I used to do it back when Pale Masters first came out and everybody was playing them. And also Death Aura didn't work right. So it was harder for Pale Masters to keep themselves up. But, once they got all the negative energy spells finally working correctly, there's no reason for me to heal those guys at all. They're better at healing themselves than anything I can do to them.
And you can, I will say too, you can throw a cocoon on a Pale Master. They won't get the healing benefit of it, but it does give them 150 temporary hit points.
Yep.
So it's effectively a short-term 150-point heal, which can be pretty effective. So let's talk. I want to talk briefly about raids before we wrap this discussion up. And I'll just start. We've kind of talked about conservation of spell points with scrolling. It's not as big of a thing as it used to be, but sometimes they can still come into play. would say priority of targets. For the primary healer, I'd say you, because if you're dead, nobody else may be getting healing for a while. Key players, so this would be your tanks or your kiters, and then everyone else. If someone doesn't have a specific task that's as important, that's kiting something big or tanking something big, they're expendable, more expendable than someone else. If you are not the primary healer, if you are kind of that expendable someone else person, I'm just going to say keep in mind that you are not the most important person in this raid to keep alive. If it's between throwing your cocoon on yourself and throwing it on the healer who's getting pummeled a little bit suddenly, heal the healer. It's just going to help the raid a little bit, just saying. Or do you guys want to throw anything in when we're talking about raids and healing?
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah, heal the healer. Remember that knockdowns can happen, so if you see another class in your party that's getting low and you're thinking, he's a healer, he can heal himself. He's really low, why is he not healing himself? Alright, he's almost dead. Why hasn't he healed himself yet? Oh, maybe it's because he got knocked down by a tail whip. So throw a cocoon or something on the healer, maybe.
Yeah, and do not be the guy that stands there and says, okay, I'm almost dead, heal me, I'm almost dead, hurry up and hit me, hurry. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, if you're in a bad situation, get out of the bad situation.
Yeah, or better, and build your character in such a way that you can probably deal with those emergencies yourself, even if you can't keep yourself up altogether. And if you can't, then just die with some dignity, my God. Don't drag us all down with you.
Especially the ones that always drove me up with those were the ones that were everyone can say that they need healing, but they've been running around for like a minute at half health. Like, I need to heal. Drink some pots. You've had time. Like, seriously. I will say when we're talking about just gonna wrap this up for raids, and this kind of comes back to some heal scrolls in a backdoor way. I've often throughout the game, I like to keep one of my heal buttons kind of in reserve. For like that's the button I need when someone needs a big heal right now. These days it's cocoon. In the old days it was heal. It was actually the heal spell, which is why I tended to use a lot more scrolls back in the day. That way, when it came down to it, if someone needed a quick heal and they needed it right now, I could throw a quick and heal. I know that it would land most of the time, and that I had a lot of success with that. Like I said, now cocoon's kind of the go-to for that because you don't have to worry as much about range and stuff. As far as assignments go, if you're gonna heal outside of an assignment you've been given, don't do it at the detriment of the assignment you've been given. I've seen a lot of healers try and not everyone can heal the entire party, and that's totally fine. If you're given an assignment, if that's all you can do, that's fine. That's what your assignment was, and then it's on the party leader. Don't try and do more than you've been assigned if you can't do it, because that can cause a raid wipe in that way.
Hey, you know what the best emergency heal is? Speaking of emergency heals, the best one is the sovereign follower of the sovereign host. Was it 6th level? You get this, and it doesn't take spell points. It can't be interrupted. It cures every remedy and does 10,000 points of healing. Now you can only do it once, but I mean when you're talking about you need an emergency go-to heal, there it is right there, and you can get it. You can get it twice if you do. I don't remember how you get the second one, but I think you
do it twice because you get it for the feat. They give it to you as a feat now, which is neat, but it's also in their enhancement tree.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, it's practically free if you're the right class. All you got to do is choose to be a sovereign host worshiper instead of your other choices, which aren't very good anyway. And there you go, a free emergency heal that solves almost every problem and can't be interrupted.
That's the one that gets rid of death penalties. I usually say death penalties, but if someone's in Sentinel and they're doing the 10,000 HP thing, it's kind of fun to be able to heal them back up. If you wanted to. I mean, I don't know. I've never done a situation where they actually lost that many HP and had to be healed up another 10k. But yeah, I used that last night to heal some death penalty off a guy, and it hit for something like 14,000. It's hilarious.
And
Yeah,
I've got
it's
one.
lower the top.
Sorry, I got one more tip I'm going to throw out there because I sense we're wrapping up, and I want to get this in. Anybody can heal everybody else. Just be a halfling and take the Dragon Mark of Healing. And for the cost of 1 feat and 11 AP, you get 4 heals, 6 or 7 Cure Seriouses, and 9 Cure Lights. Plus, you can take this thing called Break Out the Leeches that takes care of remedies and negative levels and all kinds of stuff, and it's practically free. All you got to do is be a halfling. And wouldn't you rather be a halfling anyway? I mean, really. So there you go. And you can. It's good enough to heal yourself. You can throw it on other people. It can't be interrupted. The only bad thing is it doesn't seem to work well when you're raged. But there you go. Had to throw that out there.
Good tip. I've used that in the past, off and on. I would say, just to wrap things up, I'll make 2 points. One is learn how monsters attack, because that can affect your positioning, particularly in taking situations and where you want to stand and be relatively safe but still be able to heal. And the other thing is, I'm just going to point out, when we talk about how much DDO is different than pen and paper, and how we're getting farther and farther away from pen and paper, I'm just going to point out, in pen and paper, you have to touch people to heal them. Just saying.
Or have your familiar do it.
Or have your familiar do it, if you have a familiar. But. And on that note, anything else you want to say on closing here, Chris?
Bind a close key to target self and the next over key to heal. That's my pro tip for the week. Target self is very important.
Move on to post really quick. Jerry posted on our Swashbuckler episode that he did end up lesser reincarnating the Swashbuckler a bit after the episode and took away the spellcraft skill points and moved them to heal. He also dropped Heighten for Quicken and Epic Spell Focus for greater single weapon fighting. Both of those choices make him more swashbucklery and less crowd control-y. Since he doesn't have Heighten or Epic Spell Focus, lose a little bit of DC, but makes you a stronger swashbuckler. Good choices, Jerry. I approve. Although we kind of talked about it, it's kind of either or. You can go both ways there. The survey question for the week: Seamus1 asks, "What was one of the first pieces of loot you pulled that excited you?"
That's Steiner Davion, isn't it?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. For me, it was a longbow of disruption. Back when that was a huge deal, and it was the first of the big 5 weapons I ever pulled, and it was awesome, and I was so happy.
Are we saying the first piece?
One of the first pieces.
I can tell you the exact first one.
Go for it.
A +1 flaming warhammer of lesser monstrous humanoid bane.
Any particular reason?
Of the Scoundrels run, I think. There were a bunch of Minotaurs in that one, and I can't remember. The level cap was like 10. And I was like, man, I'm going to take this and pound some Minotaurs in the face. That was it, though.
In the face. That's right.
I'd have to say it was Sword of Shadows, which is kind of a funny story because it dropped, and someone asked me if I wanted it. It was like a guild run, and they asked me if I wanted it. And I first went, no, I already have a +5 adamantine greatsword. I don't need that. And they're like, no, you don't. Look at the crit profile. Ooh, shiny. They
I still don't have one. I, to this day, do not have a Sword of Shadows.
This was back when, under the old raid loot system, where 2 items always dropped, and then the raid leader had to assign them, basically. So yeah. Awesome. With that, I'll say thanks to everyone who's listening to the show, and thanks to Lich and Geoff for joining me today. I think
Thanks for having me.
Discussion. Yeah. Maybe a little over the top and a little more old school than new school, but I think some great tips to consider, at least for healing, and how to be a better healer. Thanks to all the other folks that are currently contributing to DDOcast, and thanks to Turbine and Wizards for making some great games, and thanks to Cyber for hosting the podcast. You can hit us up at DDOcast.com for show notes, our calendar, previous shows, swag, and other fun stuff. If you want to be part of the show or just say hi, you can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates. Don't forget, if you're going to be in the area for PAX, August 29th at 9 p.m. near the Convention Center, we'll meet up at some bar as of yet to be determined, and have a little get-together there. The closing tip for the week comes from Udo Fire. Always carry potions or scrolls to heal yourself. The healer can't always get to you. Good advice there.
I so need to do my background like you did, Chris. That's so awesome.
So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chest level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to help the healers.